I thought my old email was dead. Then my ex-husband appeared at the top. My husband asked, "Why are you shaking?" Because the man who abandoned me for my little sister wanted forgiveness. So I opened it. For a few seconds, I just stared at his name. Eric. It sat at the top of an inbox I had not opened in 6 years. Not buried under spam. Not hidden between old coupons and forgotten password alerts. Right there. Unread. Like it had been waiting for me. I had only logged in because I needed an old tax document. That was it. Something boring. Something harmless. My current husband, Nathan, was in the next room, taping paint samples to the nursery wall. We had been talking all week about whether light blue was too obvious or if soft green felt calmer. Normal problems. Peaceful problems. Then Eric's name appeared on my screen, and my body forgot I was safe. Nathan must have heard my chair scrape back because he came into the kitchen holding a strip of painter's tape. "Allison," he asked. "What happened?" I tried to answer, but my throat locked. He looked from my face to the laptop. "Why are you shaking?" Because 6 years ago, Eric was my husband. Because 6 years ago, my younger sister Kayla moved into our guest room. Because 6 years ago, I came home early and found out that the two people I trusted most had been lying to my face inside my own house. But I did not say all of that. I just whispered, "It's him." Nathan's expression changed. Not into anger. Not into panic. Just that steady, careful look he gets when he knows I am standing too close to an old wound. He set the tape down. "You don't have to open it." I knew that. I also knew I was going to. Before I clicked, I folded my hands in my lap and tried to remind myself that I was not the same woman anymore. I was not in that hallway. I was not in that hotel room. I was not calling a phone that would never ring. I was married again. I was loved. I was 5 months pregnant. And still, one email from Eric made me feel like the floor had shifted under my feet. Nathan pulled out the chair beside me but did not touch the laptop. "Whatever it says," he said quietly, "you're here now." I nodded, even though my body did not believe him yet. The preview showed only one line. "Allison, I know I have no right to contact you." My stomach tightened. That was the first thing he had gotten right in 6 years. I clicked. The message opened into a long wall of text, but I could not read it at first. My eyes caught only pieces. Sorry. Regret. Kayla. Mistake. Hospital. Forgiveness. When I saw the word hospital, I almost closed the laptop. Nathan leaned forward. "Do you want me to read it first?" "No," I said quickly. Too quickly. He nodded and leaned back. He never pushed. That was one of the reasons I trusted him. He did not grab my pain and try to control it. He waited until I gave him permission to stand close to it. I opened the laptop again. But before I could read Eric's apology, my mind dragged me back to the beginning. Back to the townhouse. Back to the person I used to be. Eric and I had the kind of marriage people called stable because nothing looked wrong from the outside. We had a small home with warm light in the kitchen, a dog who followed me from room to room, and a guest room we kept pretending was just a guest room. But we both knew what we wanted it to become. A nursery. We talked about baby names in that casual way couples do when they are trying not to seem too hopeful. He would suggest something ridiculous while brushing his teeth, and I would roll my eyes and say, "Absolutely not." I thought that was love. A shared grocery list. 2 mugs in the sink. Someone who knew how you took your coffee. Then Kayla called. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. She had fought with our parents again. She said she had nowhere to go. She said she might have to sleep in her car. Kayla had always been intense. Everything was either the worst day of her life or the start of a brand new future. She was young, impulsive, and exhausting, but she was my sister. So I asked Eric if she could stay with us for a few weeks. He did not say yes right away. He stood in the kitchen, one hand on the counter, eyes lowered. "Allison," he said, "are you sure? She's my sister." "I know. But she brings drama with her. She needs help." "For how long?" "A few weeks, I promised. Maybe a month." He let out a slow breath. Then he said, "Okay." I hugged him. I told him, "Thank you for being good to my family." That sentence still makes my skin crawl if I think about it too long. Kayla moved in that weekend with 3 bags, a cracked phone screen, and a wounded look that made me feel guilty before she even said a word. I made up the guest bed. I cleared space in the bathroom. I told her she could stay until she got steady. She hugged me and whispered, "I don't know what I'd do without you." I believed her. For the first few weeks, everything seemed fine. Then the house started changing. Not loudly. Not all at once. It changed in pauses. I would walk into the kitchen and Eric and Kayla would stop talking. I would come home and find them sitting close on the couch, but not close enough for me to accuse them of anything. I would hear them laughing after midnight, and when I came downstairs, Eric would suddenly stand up and say he was going to bed. Kayla started borrowing my clothes without asking. Eric started defending her before I even complained. "She's going through a hard time," he would say. "So am I said once. He looked at me like I had disappointed him. "You always make everything about stress." That was new. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe I had been too busy keeping our life together to notice how often he made me feel small. After that, little criticisms became normal. I worked too much. I worried too much. I was too serious. I did not know how to relax. Kayla would sit at the kitchen island, swinging one foot, and say things like, "He's not wrong, Allie. You kind of act like everyone works for you." I hated that nickname from her mouth in those moments. Allie. Like we were still close. Like she was not slowly replacing me in my own home. One night, I came home later than usual and found takeout containers on the counter. My favorite order was not there. Eric looked up from the couch and said, "We didn't know when you'd be home." Kayla gave me a tiny smile. Not guilty. Not apologetic. Satisfied. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself no husband would risk his marriage for his wife's younger sister. And no sister would look at the woman who had opened her home and decide she wanted her life instead. I was wrong about both of them. The day I found out was ordinary until it wasn't. I had been away for a work event. It was supposed to last 3 days, but the last part got canceled, and I managed to come home early. My phone had died on the way back, so I did not call or text. Part of me wanted to surprise Eric. That sounds almost pathetic now. I remember thinking maybe we could order food, watch something stupid, and reset. Maybe the tension in the house was just stress. Maybe Kayla would move out soon and everything would feel normal again. When I pulled into the driveway, Eric's car was there. So was Kayla's. I let myself in quietly because I was carrying my bag and trying not to wake the dog. The house was still. Too still. No television. No music. No sound from the kitchen. Then I heard laughter from upstairs. Kayla's laugh. Soft. Breathless. Familiar in a way that made something in my body go cold before my mind caught up. I set my bag down by the door. Murphy padded toward me, tail low, like even he knew something was wrong. I walked up the stairs slowly. The hallway felt longer than it had ever felt. I remember noticing a laundry basket near the bathroom. A towel on the floor. Sunlight cutting across the carpet. Small normal things surrounding something unforgivable. The guest room door was not fully closed. I pushed it open. For a second, nobody moved. Eric was there. Kayla was there. I will not describe more than that because I do not need to. What mattered was not the room. It was their faces. Kayla looked away. Eric looked annoyed. Not ashamed. Not horrified. Annoyed. Like I had interrupted something inconvenient. I waited for him to speak first because my brain had gone blank. He grabbed his shirt and said, "You weren't supposed to be home." That was what he chose. Not, "I'm sorry." Not even a lie. Just irritation that I had ruined the timing. I looked at my sister. "Kayla," I said. Her name came out thin and strange. She pulled the blanket closer and stared at the wall. Eric stepped between us, like he was protecting her from me. That image did something permanent to my heart. I said, "How long?" Eric rubbed his jaw. "Don't do this." "How long?" Kayla whispered, "It just happened." Eric shot her a look, and that told me everything. I laughed once. Not because anything was funny. It was more like my body had no idea what sound to make. Eric sighed. "Allison, we've been unhappy for a long time." You're never here." "I was working." "You were absent." "I was keeping this house running." His face hardened. "That's what you always do. You turn everything into a ledger." Kayla finally looked at me, and there was no real grief in her eyes. Just a wounded defiance, like she had somehow convinced herself she was the one being judged unfairly. "You don't see him," she said softly. "You don't listen to him." I stared at her. This girl had cried into my shoulder. Slept in my guest room. Used my towels. Ate from my dishes. Let me defend her to my husband. And now she was explaining him to me. I turned back to Eric. "We were trying for a baby," I said. His expression flickered. Only for a second. Then he said, "Maybe it's better we didn't have one." I stepped back like the air had been knocked out of me. Kayla said, "Eric." But he did not take it back. I do not remember walking downstairs. I remember my hand on the railing. I remember Murphy whining near the front door. I remember picking up the same bag I had dropped minutes earlier. Eric followed me halfway down the stairs. Allison, where are you going? I turned around. He looked irritated again, but underneath it, there was something nervous now. Not guilt. Consequences. I said, anywhere you are not. He called my name once as I opened the door. Kayla did not. That was the last time I walked out of that house as Eric's wife. I drove to a hotel near the airport because I could not think of anywhere else to go. I sat in the parking lot for almost an hour before I had the strength to go inside. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my ID at the front desk. The woman behind the counter looked at me gently and said, "Take your time." That almost broke me more than the betrayal. A stranger showed me more kindness in 10 seconds than my husband and sister had shown me all afternoon. The next morning, I called a lawyer. I also called my mother. She did not answer at first. When she finally called back, I was sitting on the hotel bed with my suitcase still zipped beside me. "Mom," I said, and then I started crying so hard I could barely speak. I told her everything. There was a long silence. Then she said, "Are you sure you didn't misunderstand?" I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at it. Misunderstand. As if I had accidentally walked into the wrong room. As if my husband and sister were just having a normal conversation under a blanket. "I saw them," I said. She sighed. "I know Kayla can be careless, but she's young. Mom. And Eric should have known better, obviously." "Obviously?" "I'm not defending it," she said, in the exact tone people use when they are about to defend something. "I'm just saying this is complicated." "It is not complicated. Allison, you and Eric have had problems." I froze. "What did he tell you?" Another silence. That was when I realized he had already started building his version. My mother said, "He said you've been distant. That the marriage was struggling. So that makes Kayla okay?" "No. But family does not just throw family away." I looked around the hotel room. The beige walls. The cheap lamp. The untouched coffee cup on the nightstand. I had never felt more alone. She told me to calm down. She told me not to make permanent decisions while emotional. She told me Thanksgiving was coming and nobody wanted things to become impossible. Impossible. My life had already become impossible. I hung up before she finished speaking. For the next few days, I moved like a person underwater. I answered legal emails. I avoided calls from numbers I did not recognize. I cried in the shower because the walls were thick enough that no one could hear me. Then my period was late. At first, I blamed stress. I told myself my body was just reacting to shock. But the thought would not leave me. So I bought a test. I took it in the hotel bathroom with the fan running too loud and my heart pounding in my ears. 2 lines appeared. I sat down on the closed toilet lid. Pregnant. After almost a year of trying, it had finally happened right when my marriage had collapsed. For one terrible, hopeful second, I thought it might change things. I hate admitting that. Even after what I saw, some broken part of me still wanted Eric to become the man I thought he was. I called him. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I texted, "Please answer. This is important." No response. 10 minutes later, I tried again, and the call did not ring. He had blocked me. That was when I understood something worse than betrayal. He had not just chosen Kayla. He had erased me. The pain started a week later. At first, it was a cramp I tried to ignore. I was sitting at the little hotel desk, staring at paperwork I could not focus on, when it twisted low in my stomach. I stood up. Then I sat back down. Something was wrong. I called the doctor's office, but it was late, and the nurse line told me to go to the emergency room if the pain got worse. It got worse. I drove myself because I had no one to call. I remember gripping the steering wheel at every red light, whispering, "Please," even though I did not know who I was asking. I remember parking crooked. I remember walking through the hospital doors with one hand pressed against my stomach. They took me back. They asked if anyone was coming. I said no. The nurse's face softened. "We'll take care of you." And they did. They were kind. The doctor spoke gently. A nurse brought me warm blankets. Someone dimmed the light when I started crying. But kindness from strangers does not replace the person who should have been there. I called Eric from the hospital phone. Again and again. I do not know why I kept calling. Maybe grief makes you irrational. Maybe some part of me still believed that if he knew what was happening, he would come. He did not. Every call went nowhere. The doctor came in later with the kind of expression that prepares you before the words do. I lost the pregnancy. I did not scream. I just stared at the white blanket over my legs and felt something inside me go quiet in a way that scared me. The nurse asked if I wanted her to call someone. I almost said my mother. Then I remembered her voice. Family does not just throw family away. So I shook my head. I stayed in that room for hours. I watched the clock. I listened to carts roll past the door. I held the edge of the blanket like it was the only thing keeping me attached to the world. When I finally left, the sky outside was pale gray. I went back to the hotel and slept in my clothes. I found out days later why Eric never answered. Someone we both knew reached out, awkward and hesitant, clearly regretting it before she even finished the first sentence. I thought you should know, she said. Eric had taken Kayla away for a long weekend. He had told people he was turning off his phone because I was trying to pull him back into drama. Drama. That was what he called my emergency. That was what he called me begging him to answer while I sat alone in a hospital room losing the baby we had wanted. I did not cry when I heard it. I simply said, "Thank you for telling me," and ended the call. That night, I called my mother again. Not because I expected comfort. Because I needed one final confirmation. When she answered, I told her about the hospital. I told her I had been pregnant. I told her I had lost the baby alone. I told her Eric had ignored every call because he was away with Kayla. For once, she was silent long enough that I thought maybe I had reached her. Then she said, "Allison, I am sorry." I really am. I closed my eyes. But, she exhaled. But I don't want you to let grief turn you cruel. I opened my eyes. What? Kayla made a terrible mistake. Eric made a terrible mistake. But if you keep punishing everyone, this family will never heal. This family? She is still your sister. No, I said quietly. She is not. Allison. No. My voice did not shake. That surprised me. I sat up on the hotel bed and said, "I called because I wanted to know if you could be my mother for 5 minutes. You can't." She started crying then, but not the way I needed her to. "That is unfair," she said. "No," I replied. "What happened to me was unfair." Then I hung up. The next 2 weeks were the cleanest and coldest of my life. I signed papers. I sold what I could. I fought for my share of the house. I found work I could do from anywhere. I changed my phone number. I blocked my parents, Kayla, Eric, and every person who thought my pain was an inconvenience. I did not leave a dramatic message. I did not post anything online. I did not ask for one last conversation. I packed my car and left. People talk about closure as if it is a door someone else opens for you. Sometimes closure is just driving until your old life becomes too far away to turn back. The first place I rented was small and plain. The walls were thin. The carpet was ugly. The kitchen drawer stuck every time I pulled it open. I loved it. Because no one there had betrayed me. The first few months were not inspiring. I ate cereal for dinner. I cried in grocery store aisles. I slept with lights on. I flinched when couples laughed too loudly in restaurants. Therapy helped. Not quickly. Nothing helped quickly. But slowly, I learned that my fear was not weakness. My anger was not poison. It was proof that some part of me still knew I deserved better. My therapist once asked me, what would peace look like if you stopped waiting for them to admit what they did? I did not know how to answer. For a long time, I thought peace would mean Eric apologizing, Kayla breaking down, and my mother finally saying she failed me. But that kind of peace depends on people who already proved they cannot be trusted with the truth. So I built a different kind. Small. Quiet. Mine. I made friends who did not know the old version of me. I bought dishes that had never sat in that townhouse. I created routines that belonged only to the life I had chosen. And after a few years, I met Nathan. He did not save me. I need that to be clear. I had already done the hard work before he arrived. But he made safe feel possible again. He listened without trying to fix me. He asked before touching my shoulder if I was upset. He remembered dates that were hard for me without making a production out of them. The first time I told him the full story, we were sitting on the floor of my apartment eating takeout from the containers. I expected pity. Or discomfort. Nathan just reached across the space between us and said, "I'm sorry they left you alone." Not, "I'm sorry that happened." Not, "You're so strong." He understood the worst part. They left me alone. I cried harder than I expected to. He did not move closer until I nodded. That was when I knew he was different. Nathan and I got married quietly. No big guest list. No family drama. No speeches from people who had not earned the right to stand beside us. Just a few close friends, simple flowers, and sunlight. For once, nothing felt like a performance. When I became pregnant again, I was terrified before I was happy. Nathan found me sitting on the bathroom floor with the test in my hand, staring at it like it might disappear if I breathed too hard. He crouched in the doorway. "Is it positive?" he asked. I nodded. His eyes filled before he smiled. Then he said, "Okay. We do this together." That was all. No big speech. No promise too large to believe. Just together. And he meant it. Every appointment, he came. Every anxious night, he stayed awake with me. Every time I panicked over a symptom, he took me seriously without feeding the fear. By the time I opened that old email, I was 5 months along. Healthy. Stable. Starting to believe I might actually get to keep this happiness. We had just moved into a small house with a backyard big enough for a swing set someday. The nursery still smelled like primer. There were tiny folded clothes in a drawer I opened more often than I admitted. That was the life Eric interrupted. Not with a knock. Not with a call. With an email sent to an account he must have hoped I still checked. I read it in the kitchen while Nathan sat beside me, silent and watchful. Eric's message was long. It began with apology, but not the clean kind. The desperate kind. The kind that circles itself because the person writing it wants relief more than accountability. He wrote that he had been trying to find a way to reach me for years. He wrote that he knew he had no right. He wrote that what happened with Kayla had ruined more lives than he understood at the time. Then he told me what became of them. Their relationship fell apart quickly. Once the secrecy was gone, so was the excitement. Kayla did not want real life with him. She wanted escape, attention, and someone else to deal with the consequences. He said she spent money he did not have. He said they fought constantly. He said she lied to him the same way she had lied with him. I felt no surprise while reading that part. People who build something on betrayal should not be shocked when it cannot hold weight. Then came the part about my parents. According to Eric, when Kayla finally ran back to them, she rewrote the entire story. She made herself smaller, younger, more helpless. She claimed Eric had pressured her when she was vulnerable. My parents believed her. Maybe because it was easier than admitting they had protected the wrong daughter. Maybe because Kayla crying had always been louder than me telling the truth. They turned on Eric hard. Not because of what he did to me. Because of what Kayla said he did to her. That part almost made me close the laptop. Not because I felt bad for him. Because even karma had somehow found a way to center Kayla. Eric wrote that he lost friends. Lost stability. Fell behind on bills. His work suffered. People stopped inviting him anywhere. He moved into a cheap room and took whatever job he could get. Then the tone changed. He wrote about the hospital. He said he had found out what happened after I left. He did not say from whom. Maybe someone finally told him. Maybe guilt made him go looking. He wrote that knowing I had called him from a hospital bed while his phone was off had haunted him every day. He wrote, "I thought you were trying to manipulate me. I thought you were trying to ruin my weekend." I did not know. My hands tightened around the edge of the laptop. Nathan noticed. "You okay?" he asked. I shook my head, but kept reading. Eric wrote, "That does not excuse it. Nothing excuses it. I chose to believe the worst about you because it made my choices easier." For the first time, I stopped breathing for a second. Because that was true. He had needed me to be cold, distant, dramatic, difficult. He had needed me to become the villain so he could survive seeing himself clearly. He ended the email with a request. Not for a relationship. Not for reconciliation. Just 15 minutes. Coffee. A conversation. He said he needed to look me in the eye and apologize. He said he needed to know I had survived him. I laughed when I read that line. It came out sharp and unfamiliar. Nathan looked at me. "What?" I turned the laptop toward him. He read silently. When he finished, his jaw was tight. "He does not get to ask this from you," he said. "I know. Are you going to answer?" I looked toward the nursery doorway. A strip of blue tape still hung from the frame. There was a little pair of socks on the counter because I had carried them around the house that morning for no reason except they made me happy. I thought about ignoring the email. That would have been clean. That would have been mature. That would have been exactly what my therapist would probably tell me to do. But then I thought about the hospital phone. I thought about calling again and again. I thought about Eric turning his phone off so I would not interrupt his weekend with my sister. I thought about my mother asking me to keep Thanksgiving from being awkward. I thought about years of silence where everyone who hurt me got to imagine whatever version of me made them sleep better. Broken. Bitter. Alone. No. I did not want to meet Eric for coffee. I did not want to hear his voice. I did not want his apology touching the air around me. But I wanted him to know one thing. I had survived him. Nathan asked again, softer this time, what do you need? I said, I need to answer once. He did not tell me not to. He just said, then make it something you can live with tomorrow. That sentence saved me from writing something cruel. I opened a reply. My fingers hovered over the keys for a long time. Then I wrote, Eric, I received your email. I will not meet you. I will not give you coffee, comfort, or closure in person. The woman you abandoned 6 years ago had to rebuild her life without your apology. She had to grieve alone, heal alone, and learn how to feel safe again without help from the people who hurt her. I am alive. I am loved. I am married to a man who has never made me beg to matter. We are expecting a healthy baby, and the life I have now is peaceful because you are not in it. You made your choices. I survived them. Do not contact me again. Allison. I read it 3 times. Nathan read it once. He looked at me and said, are you sure? No, I said. Because I was not. Not completely. But I also knew there was no version of this where I felt clean. Silence would have left the email rotting in my head. A meeting would have reopened a door I had nailed shut. Rage would have made me sound like someone I did not want to become. This was the only answer I could stand. So I sent it. Then I blocked the account, downloaded the tax document I had originally come for, and permanently closed the inbox. For the rest of the night, I felt strangely calm. Nathan made dinner. I barely ate. We sat together on the couch while he rested one hand near my stomach, not on it until I moved it there myself. The baby kicked once. I cried then. Not because of Eric. Because his email had not taken my life away from me. It had only reminded me how hard I had fought to keep it. For 2 days, I told myself it was over. Then Tessa called. Tessa was one of the few people from my old life who still had a way to reach me. She had not taken sides loudly back then, which used to hurt me. But she also had not defended Eric or Kayla, and over the years, we rebuilt a careful friendship. I told her about the email. I told her what I wrote. At first, she was quiet. Then she said, I understand why you did it. I waited. There was always a but in that tone. But, I asked. Tessa sighed. But Allison, telling him about the baby and your marriage like that. I don't know. Maybe silence would have hurt less. That was not the point. I know. I just mean, maybe you gave him too much of you. That landed differently than I expected. Not like an accusation. More like a warning. I looked across the room at the nursery boxes stacked near the wall. Tessa said, he deserved nothing from you. I believe that. I just don't want him dragging your happiness into the same old room. I did not answer right away. Because part of me hated her for saying it. And part of me knew exactly what she meant. The next morning, my mother emailed my professional account. Seeing her name felt different from seeing Eric's. Eric was a ghost. My mother was a bruise. Her email was long, emotional, and exhausting. She said she had heard from Eric that I replied. She said he was devastated. She said I had become cold. She said pregnancy should have softened me, not made me cruel. Then she wrote the line that made my hand go still on the mouse. We all made mistakes. I stared at those 4 words. We all. Like my mistake had been leaving. Like my mistake had been surviving without asking permission. Like my sister taking my husband under my own roof was the same as me refusing to comfort the man who helped ruin my life. I did not reply. Not to that. Not anymore. But I did bring the email to my next therapy appointment. My therapist read it carefully. Then she set it down and asked, what do you feel? I expected to say anger. Instead, I said, tired. Tired of what? Being told my pain is only acceptable if it stays polite. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, that is important. I waited for her to tell me I had done the wrong thing. That I had used my happiness like a weapon. That I had invited old poison into my new life. She did not. She asked, do you regret sending it? I thought about that. I regret that he made me the kind of person who wanted to send it. She nodded. That is not the same thing. I went home after that and found Nathan in the nursery assembling the crib. He was sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by screws, wooden rails, and instructions he clearly hated but refused to admit were confusing. He looked up when I came in. How was it? I leaned against the doorway. I think I'm done, I said. With Eric. With all of them. Nathan studied my face. Then he smiled gently. Good. I sat on the floor beside him and picked up one of the wooden pieces. For a while, neither of us spoke. The room was quiet except for the soft scrape of hardware and the occasional frustrated mutter from Nathan when the instructions skipped a step. Eventually, he said, for what it's worth, I don't think you were cruel. I looked at him. He tightened a screw slowly. I think you told the truth to someone who spent years avoiding it. I wanted that to settle everything. It did not. But it helped. A week has passed now. Eric has not contacted me again. My mother has sent 2 more emails. I deleted both without opening them. Kayla, as far as I know, is still somewhere in the same chaos she always lived in. I do not check. I do not ask. I do not want updates. The nursery is almost finished. The crib is built. The walls are painted. There is a soft rug in the center of the room and a little lamp shaped like a moon on the dresser. Sometimes I stand in there when Nathan is asleep and let myself feel the weight of everything I almost lost and everything I still have. I used to think healing meant becoming gentle about what happened. Now I think healing means telling the truth without letting it swallow you. Maybe Tessa was right. Maybe silence would have been cleaner. Maybe I should have left Eric alone with his guilt and let that be the punishment. Or maybe the man who ignored my calls from a hospital room did not deserve a peaceful ending written by the woman he abandoned. I know I did not lie. I know I did not ask for him back. I know I did not threaten him, chase him, or reopen the door. I told him I was alive. I told him I was loved. I told him not to contact me again. And maybe the only reason people called it cruel is because, for once, my survival was not quiet enough for them. So now I am sitting in the nursery with my hand resting over my stomach, wondering if I finally gave my ex-husband the closure he deserved. Or if I used the life I rebuilt to hurt a man who is already broken.